Okay, so I tried to make a video about this the other day, or at least I'm trying to show a video that an interview between Joe Rogan and Trigonometry, and it got copyrighted. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play a video in the background. You can watch me grind for experience or something. I'll try and make it halfway entertaining. While I play the audio in the background, I may pause it on occasion. Uh, so, but I please, it's like going to be about 20 minutes long. Hang in there. There's several good points that are brought up, so it's worth sitting through. Okay, let's try it.
Streak ahead. Eventually, you're going to have to say, look, we can't keep doing this, because look, think about yourself. If something doesn't work with your show, and it means that less people are watching, less people are get interested, whatever it may be. You, as a business owner, you look into it. Of course you do. So that's one of the things where I'm thinking actually capitalism will win, because eventually you're not going to bankrupt and you're not going to make yourself out of a job. Now the extremists will do that, but the vast majority of ordinary people who've got families, who've got mortgages to pay, will go, hang on a second. That's what I'm hoping for, is that we come to our senses, a collective coming to our senses.
Yeah, the problem is, whenever we have this conversation, and in the West this is a very common thing, people underestimate the power of ideology. We think we're very rational. We're really not. Ideology is a very powerful tool, and one of the things that's happening in the West is these institutions are being captured, as you mentioned. And once you've got the laws on the books, it becomes very hard to get...
So, starting with colleges, once that happens, it quickly goes into high schools, and it also goes, like he said, into law books as well.
Let them back off once you start to implement some of these concepts. So we're going to have to work very hard to challenge this stuff in a healthy way. Like I said, I think we're doing it right now. I think we're having the conversations, you are, we are. We see initiatives in the UK which are aimed at preventing this sort of censorship, people being cancelled, people losing jobs for things they've said. The Free Speech Union does some good work. But it's a difficult spot. And I wrote an immigrant's love letter to the West, Joe, because I love particularly the United States, Britain, and I'm deeply concerned that I'm seeing some of the patterns that I saw in my life and in my grandparents' lives in the Soviet Union. My grandmother was born in a gulag. She was born in a concentration camp for people who said the wrong thing. I'm not saying we're there. We're not there. We're not there in the West. Let's be clear about it, right? But the direction of travel bothers me. When I see people pursuing equality of outcome at any cost, that bothers me. When I see people...
I'm just pausing for copyright purposes. But yeah, he's very accurate. That these people were from Constantine. I forgot the other person's name from Trigonometry offhand. They're both from different countries who suffered through different problems that are government related. I'll let them explain more.
People being divided into groups and being told that this group is good and this group is bad, that worries me. It's not a healthy direction, and a house divided against itself cannot stand. It can't stand. We've got to understand that, the beauty of the West is we are going to have different views and different ideas about things, but we can't destroy our own civilization from the inside. We can't undermine the very values that built this civilization. And freedom, we talked about freedom here in Austin, it's such a big part of it. You can't make the technological and scientific progress that we've made without scientists being free to pursue science. And if we can't agree on what a woman is, biological fact,
Pausing for copyright purposes, but I'll leave a link if this video stays up to what is a woman. It's butchered, but not quite as bad as this. And you can check that out. Hate it or love it, you should at least watch it to know, the arguments.
Eating our civilization from the inside. This is very dangerous. We've got to push those extremists to where they belong, and we've got to concentrate on the sensible middle of people who who want to have a reasonable conversation about these issues. And as we travel around America, we talked about how much we love it. We talk to people here. This is a divided country right now, man. And a lot of people are scared. A lot of people are angry. A lot of people think that the other side is not just wrong, but evil.
Yeah.
That worries me. That worries me because America is the thing that holds the world together.
Pausing again for copyright purposes, but what he's talking about, and he'll get into detail in a minute, is like when words become equal to violence, then somebody disagreeing with you can, some of these people on the left automatically think if you destroy their identity by disagreeing with them, you're being violent. Therefore, it gives them the reason to act violently, physically, even though you never touch them.
Right now.
It worries me how many intelligent people adopt these simplistic narratives and they spout them out on Twitter for likes.
Yeah.
But this is the thing. It's all, and I. This is so important. Please always be wary of people offering simple solutions to complex problems.
Yeah.
Simple solutions never work for incredibly complex, nuanced problems. They might make you feel good. They might make you feel that you have the answer. That if only we do this, that suddenly we're going to.
Now, I've mentioned I live in Indianapolis. I might as well go ahead and throw this out there. Now, I've seen be kind or be nice and stuff like that, and that's exactly what he's talking about. Like, those things sound like catchphrases, sound nice, but they don't really mean anything. So I'm just, maybe I'll film some of these later that's around, but like, simple solutions are not going to work for complicated problems.
Reach some utopia. Life doesn't work like that. Complex problems take years to resolve, and sometimes some problems are not resolvable. You can tinker at the edges, you can do your best to solve it. There will always be poverty. You may be able to reduce it, but you're never going to be able to eradicate it completely. There will always be evil people, murderers, rapists. Unfortunately, that is part of the human condition. Now, you can put steps in place to minimize it and all the rest of it, but you're never going to stop that. There's always going to be that element of people. I think part of the problem is, and Konstantin and I talk about this a lot of people in the US and the UK and all around the Western world have got what I call Western privilege. You grew up in a country that is comparatively safe.
Now, think about this. I know Jordan Peters mentioned this before, but he makes some good points because we don't think about it. If you are in the United States, you'll, or if you're not, you'll know what he means by this. I'm not worried about whether or not the building I'm in is going to fall down, and if there's like an earthquake or something, like there's always going to be risks. But in countries like in other countries where people don't care about, where it's not, how can I put this? The construction are not paid attention to as much, right? To where it's not people don't take responsibility for. I forgot what it was, but like work labor kind of restrictions and making sure that things are done right. Like they don't have those check systems in every country. So, when an earthquake happens or something, some of these other countries, like a whole bunch of buildings go down, not just occasionally one or two. Like there are a lot of things that go into this that we don't think about. And that's what he's referring to. Clean water, inside toilet.
Where you don't worry about things like electricity, where you don't worry where your next meal is coming from, where the water is clean, all these things you take for granted. That ain't normal in the rest of the world.
Yeah.
In Venezuela at the moment, like I was talking to my cousin, and I said to him, Johan, how are you doing? And he went to me, well, I mean, things are tough, Francis. I collect the rainwater in a tank on my ceiling of my house. But now people are stealing the rainwater from the tank. Yeah. And when
now think about that. Like we don't even collect rainwater. Could you imagine being so desperate to steal rainwater? Like it's hard to imagine.
And here's the other thing and this really worries me. So when one of my friends, Henry, came over from Venezuela to see my friends and particularly my family, because my parents I've known Henry since he grew up, and we took him for a meal. And my parents are in their mid to late 70s now. They're old people, and Henry was talking, and my dad said, "Henry, I'm an old man now. Could you speak up?" And he said, "Sorry, Jim." He went, because in Venezuela, we're used to whispering.
I think
And
about
that's
that.
the problem, where you live in a society where people have become used to whispering. And that's what I'm seeing in the...
And so I'm going to, copyright purposes, pause it again. And this is happening in America right now, where people are forced to keep their mouth shut. Like, there's a difference between harassing somebody at work. I'm not encouraging anybody to harass people or anything like that, but I am saying that you should be able to disagree with somebody without you yourself being harassed as well.
UK, where people are afraid to say what they think and they feel, where if you say something out loud, you're constantly looking over your shoulder because you're worried that somehow that's going to reduce your opportunities, your career. It might isolate you from friends. We can't live in a society where we whisper. That is not the West, and that's not a free society.
Joanne, I'll tell you a couple of quick stories about the power of ideology. My grandmother, who was born in a gulag, right? When they released people from these camps, you were not allowed to live within, I think, 100 miles of any of the big cities in the Soviet Union.
Copyright, pause it for copyright purposes again. So imagine, while he's telling this, living in the same community as your torturer.
At the time, you had to live in a small town in Siberia somewhere. And in these towns, the only people that lived there, because they were so remote, were the people who were former prisoners of the camps and the people who were former guards in the camps, right? And when Stalin died in 1953, Khrushchev, who took over from him, exposed his great crimes, and he said, this wasn't real communism, blah, blah, blah. And these people who lived together, the guards and the prisoners, right? My grandmother's family, on their very landing in their apartment block, opposite them, was a guy who used to be a guard in the camps. And when these great crimes of Stalin were exposed, many of these men shot themselves because they thought they were doing the right thing. They thought they were...
Pausing again for copyright purposes. Now, I've often wondered, since me and one of my closest friends pretty much quit talking to each other, I think that my friend really thinks that he's doing the best right thing in his decision, and has to do with like the trans stuff or whatever. Like, I'm sure, like, this, I don't think my friend is a bad person. I think that, that really wants to help people. However, it just makes me question, like 10 years from now, where he wonder, specifically my friend, whether or not that was, if what he was doing, is just wanting to help, or whether or not we'll realize the damage that's being caused, is what I'm trying to say. Because adults can do what they want, but when it comes to encouraging kids, like, there are some serious things that need to be looked at. And, 10 years from now, my friend that has kids, I hope, gives them more room for them to decide. But, how much damage are you really causing? Good intentions do not always equal good outcomes.
acting correctly by beating and torturing and imprisoning these people, it was for a greater good. It was for the right ideology. And we interviewed a guy, a friend of ours, who runs the oldest family-owned Italian restaurant in London. Right? He did a fundraiser for Ukrainian orphans with J.K. Rowling. And when she tweeted about it, he got a wall of one-star comments on his page calling him transphobic. And we don't know if it's related, but the very next day someone smashed in the window of his restaurant. Right? If you're doing that, you're not a good person. You're not a good person. I don't care why you're doing it. When you're smashing people's businesses up, you're not a good person. And
Okay, I'm pausing that there for a second. So I don't know who smashed in the video. I made a short video of the local restaurant near me. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean it's related to this, but specifically. But yeah, if you're throwing soup on paintings or tearing down statues, like, you're not making progress. And you should totally look at the Chinese communism when they did their switchover from in the 1960s, how close these things look exactly the same.
Ideology is what allows people to feel good while they attack people, while they send them death threats, while they send them rape threats. Do you know how the Soviet Union got a nuclear weapon? Do you not know this?
No.
So the Manhattan Project was probably one of the most gigantic advances in human technology in the history of the world. Right? It cost a huge amount of money, and it was very difficult. The bomb that was the first bomb that the Soviet Union dropped in test was a carbon copy of one of the two bombs. I think it was Nagasaki or maybe Hiroshima. It was one of those two, because scientists who were working on the Manhattan Project, who had communist sympathies, they had ideology, they gave all of the blueprints and everything to Stalin, to the Soviets, this regime that had killed millions of its own people.
Pausing again for copyright purposes, but can you imagine being so confident in your ideology that you're willing to give a nuke to someone that would otherwise be your enemy? Think about that.
Because they felt justified by their ideology, they gave the West's greatest enemy in that time a nuclear weapon. That's how hard they believed in stuff. This is the power of ideology. When you believe that you've got the right idea and you can go and burn down cities and attack people and tell people that you're going to rape them and kill them, you're not a good person. And this is what I always say to people. Don't be that thing. Don't be a useful idiot. Do not be a useful idiot. Someone who thinks they've got the right ideas and therefore you're entitled to commit violence against people or to threaten people.
I'm also going to leave a link in this video, if it succeeds in staying up, to a KGB agent who talks about being a useless person, or a puppet, is what I'm trying to say. Dumb, useful person.
Or to cancel people and to end their ability to make a living. If you're doing that, you're not a good person. You're a useful idiot.
Useful
and
idiot,
the
that's
effect
what I
it's
meant.
having on people. One of my friends who's sadly since passed away, and I'm making the details very obfuscating because I don't want people to know who this person was. This person was very sick. They were very sick with their illness. And I knew this person was sick. And we messaged back and forth on Facebook. Not as much as I should have done, because I didn't realise how ill they were. And he
Call it Dark Souls for a reason.
said to me, I really admire you, Francis, because you're brave. And I said, what do you mean?
Pay attention to this.
And he went, I couldn't do what you do. And I went, what do you mean? He went, for instance, he goes to me, I just couldn't be honest the way you're honest. And he went, when people come round to my house, I've got Douglas Murray's books, and then I hide them away. Because I know that if they see them, that I will lose friends. That I won't.
I'm going to have to pause again for copyright purposes. I hope this works. But yeah, that's something I can't stand double standards. If I went to somebody else's house, my parents' house, dad's house, or friend's house, they don't put up shit. So I leave my paintings or books or whatever. I couldn't imagine if I had to put things up to have friends over or to have guests over, they're not worth being a guest.
Be accepted, and that I will be ostracised. And when this person passed away, I saw on Facebook loads of people saying, what a nice person he was. And he was a nice person. He was lovely, he was kind, he was all of those things. But that's what they didn't mean by nice. Nice meant that he toed the party line. He didn't challenge. He didn't stand up for himself. That's what nice means. And the thing that I hate about this ideology is they say that they're doing things to be kind. They're doing things because they're doing the right thing.
Remember I said that be kind, be nice? I planned that because it would circle back around. But there are where people are spray painting that, and you see signs of it around here.
We're creating a safe space. It's not a safe space. What does safe space actually mean? I don't want you to challenge my opinions. That's what's...
Pausing again for copyright purposes. But yeah, definitely, the fuck, definitely think about that. They don't want you to voice any opinion that's different from their own.
So dangerous about this ideology
Safe for
because it's a
them,
form of tyranny
not safe for
masked
you.
with kindness, and it's not kindness. It's just a different way of silencing people and getting them to shut up. And if they don't shut up, you're going to take everything from them. But what's really interesting in it isn't like the authoritarian, like in Venezuela. People know the rules. They do it because they're being kind and respectful, and they're manipulating language, and it's insidious. And it's in our culture where now we can't define what a woman is. You ask somebody what a woman is, and if on the liberal left, they'll have a fucking meltdown.
Have you seen the documentary?
Yeah,
Yes.
of course.
Bro, watching those people. See, we all know all of the shit. We talk about it all the time. But watching those people,
See, and again, he's referring to those videos. You can watch it yourself if you want to know what he's talking about. But the friend that I was referring to had a meltdown when I kept asking very specific questions. How do you know what you know? Using street epistemology to try to understand how you got to that conclusion, and couldn't give a direct answer. That's why I ended up being blocked, because I asked the right questions.
the way they react.
Yeah.
Holy shit, man.
Yeah, it's wild.
We're about to interview Matt Walsh and talk to him about it. Bro, that is the most terrifying thing I've seen for a long time.
And do you know the beauty of the film is that the first half an hour, I was laughing. I'm like, this is
Yeah.
really funny.
Yeah.
Look at him,
Yeah.
he's an idiot. No.
Right.
Then they got into the doctors,
Yeah.
and I'm like, oh my god, this
Hits
is
me to full
actually
circle,
terrifying.
Yeah.
Where they're interviewing that doctor, and she's
Damn.
just, and she's...
Does a chicken have gender identity?
Yeah.
Right.
Does a chicken cluck or whatever the hell she
They
says?
really
she goes,
think this stuff.
This is a delusion that is just, it's an illness.
Well, what's fascinating is the very question can't be answered. What is a woman? Like someone who identifies as a woman. Okay, but what is that?
Yeah.
Anyone who has the gender identity that they identify themselves.
Okay, pause again for copyright purposes. But if you think about it, like, this has not been ever a question for, what, over 200, 300 years minimum? As long as we've ever had a reason to even think about this. All of a sudden, there's 80 genders. That's nonsense.
As a woman. What does that mean? Again, how does someone know what a real woman feels like? If you're a biological male, and you say, I identify as a woman, I think I'm a woman, how do you know what a woman is? What does that mean?
I get it. See, the thing is, to you guys, this is like weird and new. I've seen this. This is exactly what it was like in the Soviet Union. Exactly. You had to believe things that made no sense because you didn't want to be punished.
But the people that do believe it, that have their own personal experience with...
Pausing again for copyright purposes. I really want this video out. But when I walked down the street the other day and I'm seeing all these pride flags on every single store, I'm like, maybe some people are, for it and stuff. And I'm not going to voice an opinion and get into that. It's a different subject. However, it makes you wonder how many of these shops owners feel pressured to do that socially rather than actually believe it. Social pressure.
Gender dysphoria. That's a real thing. It's
Of course.
Of course.
It's existed
Like
throughout time.
Yeah. Well, like
Which
I said,
is-
we employ people who have gender dysphoria.
It's a fascinating portal through with these ideas trailing in behind it. That's what's interesting about it.
How do you mean?
Well, because if you accept this one thing which is very strange, right? This one thing that not only can you be a biological male with a penis, but you're a woman and you have sex with women and you make that woman pregnant. If that woman identifies as a male, that's a pregnant male.
Think about that. What part of that makes any fucking sense? At all? Any of it? Okay.
It's wild.
Joe, this is just a bunch of horseshit. No offense to anybody, right?
But the people obviously feel something, right? They feel like they don't belong. They feel better with a wig and a
100%.
beard.
You want to wear a wig and a beard, you're an adult, go for it.
Right.
Right? I accept people for what... someone says to me, look, I identify as a woman. my pronoun. I've never misgendered people just because I want to get on with people, you know?
Right.
I'm not...
It's not that important.
It's not that important. However, there are situations where it is super important, right?
Right.
Prisons,
Yes.
UFC.
Right.
Okay, on this list, I don't think he says doctor, but like if you go to a doctor and, you know, whether you're male or female, there are certain issues that only one gender is going to have. Like there's things that both of them can have, but there's certain things that only one gender or another. So you can't lie to your doctor despite what your emotions and stuff make you feel. If you plan to actually get help with whatever it is that's bothering you, you have to, you know. And the doctor fucking knows. You can just look at you. Children can tell, you know, parents aside from each other without actually, you know, and I'm talking about like younger than 5. Doctor fucking knows.
Children, right? Swimming. Sports, we could say,
sports.
right?
Yeah.
Look, it comes from the denial of a very...
I want to say this real quick when it comes to sports. Yeah, men are physically different. The bone structure is different. Like contact sports especially, I think need to be relooked at when it comes to... I mean, that's dangerous anyhow, but when it comes to males versus females, you don't see females playing football against males, do you? Maybe there's a reason why.
Basic thing, which is there's a difference between men and women.
Yeah.
We kind of forgot about that for a while there, and we need to remember that there is one. That does not mean that that should be used to oppress people or deny people rights or anything like that.
Exactly.
But there's a difference.
Do you think it signals a pivotal chapter in this whole thing, that this is where, and you were saying this, that this is probably what's going to force it to implode? And do you think that do you find an encouragement in the fact that out of the people that are completely free, and that's, the word completely is probably the wrong word, but out of the people that do commentary on the internet, where they don't have a network that they have to answer to, they don't have producers that they have to answer to, and executives that have this woke ideology as their center point, you're seeing far more people excel and advance and succeed in rational, objective commentary.
Yes.
Truth. At the end of the day, this is the one thing that... have you ever read The Gulag Archipelago by Solzhenitsyn?
No, I haven't.
It's the story of the gulags. It's a gigantic book. And whether that's at your own level as an individual or at the level of society, in the long run, truth always wins. We all know what the truth is.
But here's a worrying thing. It depends the censorship that
Yes.
is going to hit the internet.
Yeah, big tech.
Because here's the thing that we all can agree on. The Overton window for discussing and for discussion and for debate is narrowing. You can feel it.
I'm going to pause that for a second. Well, what does he mean by that? He will elaborate on pausing for copyright purposes, but how open we're allowed to have discussions. So, if like the whispering thing before, if you start to have to whisper about what you think about, then you know that that there's issues.
We all know it. We can all feel it. It's narrowing day by day.
Well, we see it on YouTube, right?
Yeah.
Where things get censored and it doesn't even make sense that they're problematic.
Exactly. And that being the case, you know...
Just real quick, when you're talking about censored on YouTube, there's like 5 or 6 different platforms as far as, channels. They're entirely different. ASMR, top thing comes to my mind, but video games like Oxhorn, obviously Red Pill, they'd be the first one censored because they're talking about other things that people disagree with. But yeah, there's a lot of censoring going on, and not all of it's explained.
We all say that the internet is the great hope for us to be able to debate and share ideas. But what's happening, because these companies are coming under a tremendous amount of pressure from governments in order to, to toe the line.
To keep everybody safe.
Just keep it, again,
it's about safety, right? That's the most dangerous word in all of this, because once you change the meaning of words, once you say that words are violence...
Yeah.
Alright, pay attention to this. This is what I mentioned earlier.
Well, I'm entitled to come and bash you over the head with a bike club.
Right.
because you're saying things I don't like, and that's violence against me.
Right.
So safety is this word that doesn't mean what it used to mean. Have you noticed that?
Yeah.
It doesn't mean an absence of physical violence, which is the definition of safety. Safety now means people not being allowed to express certain opinions.
Did you see the video where there's a woman, she's a law professor from Berkeley,
Oh,
Yes,
I did.
yeah, we did.
I did.
and he's asking her questions about a woman and
Yeah.
a woman's right to reproductive freedom, and she said, I just want to recognize that your statements are transphobic,
Yes.
and they open up trans people to violence.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's the way you do it, right?
Yeah.
Because you
And
keep-
laughing while she's
and
saying
laughing while she's saying.
I just want to say, like this
Because-
mocking
Now
condescension.
think about that. Is transphobic. Now I want to make this quick, but that means fear of people who have a mental illness. No one's afraid of them. So when you say it's transphobic to say only females can give birth, that's not a fear of people who have, issues with them with how they view themselves. That's just stating the fact that only females can give birth. It's not complicated. They're the only ones that have the right organs to do so.
Shitty attitude.
Of course, but what a beautiful way to shut down a conversation.
It's like Monty Python. What are you going to do? Put it in a box?
Yes. Not by shouting over somebody, but by taking the moral high ground.
Yes.
And once you take that moral high ground, if you then criticize me,
Yeah.
well, you're being transphobic.
Right.
And I have this moral high ground, and if you attack me again, then you're in the wrong. And this is where it gets dark. This phrase, sorry that I keep headbutting the mic, that they always use, the right side of history.
Yeah.
We are on the right side of history.
Yeah.
And you just think to yourself, how arrogant are you that you think you're so sure of your own opinion that hundreds of years down the line, people are going to look at you and think you are the new MLK.
Right.
How arrogant is it? And it's so beautiful as well because they say you're on the wrong side of history and immediately your opinion doesn't matter anymore because you're part of the problem. And if you're part of the problem, we don't have to engage with you.
Now, think about I have to keep pausing. I'm sorry this has ended up being a half an hour long. But, now, I've seen this happen to where, even in personal experience with my friend, who I'm trying hard to not name, because I don't want to be that kind of person, but would not be willing to have a conversation after a certain point because, not only because I disagreed, but if you disagree, then you're automatically considered, like you said, part of the problem. So,
And it's something that I said in 2020.
there's not
when the whole
room for
world went nuts,
conversation.
When you had the BLM marches and they were saying things like abolish capitalism, defund the police, and I had friends who got on board with this, and I saw what happened in Venezuela, and I said to them, be very, very careful. You don't understand the forces that you are messing with. You don't understand. He's seen it. I saw what happened in Venezuela. I saw like my cousin had to flee for his life. He's a journalist because if you criticize the government, my grandfather was murdered when I was 31. His murder was never investigated, even though we know who did it, because investigating crimes is a sign of right-wing oppression.